Cutting Edge in just a couple minutes. The host for that is Linda Berman Hall. She's with me here in the studio to give you a music calendar. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you, Howard. Happy to be here. And because Cutting Edge involves UCSC faculty, grad student, and staff, sometimes other emeriti research, whatever, into the community, the smiling face of the university that you can enjoy at performances, book signings, public lectures, and the like. I would like to let you be aware of some events at UCSC that are coming right up. First of all, on Saturday, March 2nd, the UCSC Eurasian Ensemble, which is a music ensemble with special guest Carolyn Kruger, will be at 3 p.m. at the UCSC Recital Hall, directed by Tanya Merchant. UCSC Jazz Ensembles with special guest Ashwin Batish Sitar will be on that same date, March 2nd, Saturday, 7:30 p.m., UCSC Recital Hall. Santa Cruz Baroque Festival on the following day, Sunday, 3 p.m., with Virtu Ensemble playing Bach and Telemann, UCSC Music Recital Hall. And now a free event, UCSC Gamelan Open Rehearsal, March 4th, Monday night, 7 p.m. at the UCSC Recital Hall. And on Friday, on March 8th at 7:30, UCSC Music Recital Hall. Very busy venue, the UCSC Orchestra Concert. The Wind Ensemble on Saturday, March 8th at 7:30, UCSC Music Recital Hall. The Wind Ensemble, UCSC Wind Ensemble. A fascinating concert. And now, from next week's interviewee, Russell Rodriguez, it will be Music of Mexico, El Mariachi, and that will be on the 10th of March. That will be a mid-afternoon concert, 3 p.m., directed by Russell Rodriguez. He's a researcher on Music of Mexico, and he will be interviewed on next week, Cutting Edge, at 7:30 p.m. So enjoy the Cutting Edge tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. You're listening to KSQD Santa Cruz. Again, that's 90.7 FM, online at ksqd.org.
Good evening. This is KSQD FM 90.7 in Santa Cruz, and you're listening to A Cutting Edge. This is Linda Berman Hall, your host, Sunday nights at 7:30. Tonight we'll be dealing with the Fusion Project, a combination of physics and art in various forms. We'll be talking with the curator of the project, an artist from the project, along with the curator who is an artist herself, and a couple of the physicists who are working in the project. The project is a very, very interesting way of bringing together some of the strengths of Santa Cruz, as said by one of the conceptual geniuses behind the project, Stephanie Bailey, PhD at the university, who is a full-time lecturer in physics. This collaboration aims to enable people to access and engage with physics through arts, and to think about the role physics plays in their lives and in the world at large. This is a way to bridge local community with UC Santa Cruz and foster innovative exchange between two of Santa Cruz's greatest strengths, our thriving scientific and artistic communities. So first I'd like to introduce Tana. Tell us about what your work is about. Tonic Olsen is an artist and is the curator of this show. She's a specialist in identity and branding. She's been working with Colson Design for years. She has worked as the curator of the Scrap Santa Cruz Recycled Arts Project, and here she's doing a good deal more. Tana?
Before I talk about my own work, what I'd like to talk about is the show a little bit and who we're bringing in. We have glass artists, we have ceramicists, we have fabric art, we have paintings, mixed media, and some very interesting installations. I want to say that the show will be opening March 1st at the R. Blitzer Gallery. The opening starts at 5 o'clock at night until 9 p.m. It will be running through March 30th. The gallery is open Tuesday through Saturday from noon until 5 p.m. If you'd like to see anything about what we're working with in more detail, you can visit our website. The website is slbailey, B-A-I-L-E-Y, 109.wixsite, wixsite.com/fusion, F-U-S-I-O-N. The art of physics fusion. I think for me, what was really interesting about my particular project, I got paired up with a physicist who's working with the scanning tunneling microscope that was developed in Zurich in 1986. And in 2004, through this microscope, they discovered graphene. My background is in illustration with a pencil, with pens, but mostly pencil illustration. Graphene comes from a pencil. So that was really exciting to me, to be able to both illustrate and develop artwork around this exciting new material. Graphene, after being discovered through scanning tunneling microscope in 2004, kind of revolutionized a lot about how we see things in our world.
Well, I think that everybody has their moments to be creative together, and as they're creative, to make their designs go in different directions, sometimes unexpected designs. And I think that that's probably what the process of creativity is about. And so I very much respect that in the case of an artist who gets involved and has to hit pause for a moment as they conceive a different direction and shoot off into something unexpected. And that's probably just about perfect, and probably quite empowering for the artist ultimately, as they, like a cat dropped from a height, land on their feet in a different part of the artistic experience, maybe exemplifying what they meant to illustrate in the first place, or maybe seeing that they've illustrated something quite unexpected and yet valid. I'd like to also now introduce another artist, Ann Altstadt, who is working in the project. And you are working in a completely different medium. And I'm wondering if you could tell us how you got involved and what you are doing.
Hi there, thanks for having me here today. The piece that I'm doing for this show is a combination of different media that was somewhat a spin-off of things that I was already interested in working on, but then also definitely just inspired by meeting with my physics researcher and touring both his lab here on campus and BLAC, where he uses high-energy particles to scan small-scale structures of matter. And so the piece that is going to be in this show, it's a sculptural installation that also has a live video element to it, though it's going to be a combination of, there's multiple video cameras and some video feedback, as well as a kaleidoscope made from switching cameras and going through a mixer where it's mirrored. And then there's also mirrors, which are made out of plastic, not glass. But there's so the first meeting that I had with my researcher, he very specifically said, I don't want you to illustrate my data set. I think that's not a good idea. I was like, okay, cool. And so in the process of meeting and talking several times, what we went for instead was kind of metaphorically illustrating the research process in kind of an abstracted way. But also, like I said earlier, it was really also inspired by the research apparatuses that I saw both on campus and over the hill, that are this combination of high-tech but also archaic and also kind of cobbled together and homemade, which I find really endearing and intriguing. So they're in this high-tech context where there's X-rays and computers and whatnot, but then there's also things with like wires sticking out and tinfoil wrapped around them, and they're also being, there are prototypes that are being made and worked on in a lot of instances. So I'm trying to, that's also reflected in the piece that I'll have in this show.
Are you going to cobble things together?
It's cobbled together, yeah,
You're a
intentionally.
cobbler.
Intentionally.
So your piece is already set for the show.
I would not say that, no. It is in the process of being set. It's there's glue currently setting. No, but I've been working on and prototyping various aspects of it for the past months and weeks, and looking forward to seeing it in its finished, polished state, ready to deliver on Tuesday.
And do you have light involved in yours as well?
I do have light involved, and projection, and small crystals of organized matter that I made out of trash. That was
Excellent.
yeah, out of plexiglass and wood, laminated and cut.
From the standpoint of the curator, would you like to speak about these matters, your selection of artists, and how much you knew about the physics and how much could be shared by the physicist in charge, Stephanie, with you before you did select the artist, or how the pairing was done, or did you want to reveal any of the secrets? You're drawing numbers out of a hat, or I'm not sure how this all came out to be.
It's Stephanie's brainchild. My understanding was that we accepted the artists, and then the physicists got to choose first, second, and third, like who their preferred artist was. Am I correct there? So yes, that's how it was done. And we started out with 17 artists. We're down, or 20. We had 20 artists involved, and now we have 17. A couple people, I think, got a little busy. It's exciting. As a curator, I'm watching the images come in as I try and figure out how they're going to fit within the space. And then we're doing a write-up, which I think is really great. They're not loving me that they have to write up about 900 to 1,000 words about their project. Half of that coming from the artist, the other half from the physicist, so we can learn a lot about all the different areas of physics. It's interesting to me because I think I got really lucky. My physicist is studying, atomic levels of graphite, which is graphene, and I grew up drawing. And so it was very exciting to see what this pencil turned into in modern day technologies. And yeah, you talk to and I read about other projects coming in, and they have nothing to do with graphene or a scanning tunneling microscope, and they're studying something completely different. But I think for myself, what I discovered was through this pencil and graphene, and then seeing what graphene is going to do to the computer industry and the medical industry and the electronics industry, was that physics is underneath our nose every day. It's people walking around like I can't look at the world the same now. I look out there and I'm like, wow, that's a physics thing, and oh, I wonder how they figured that out, and when did that get discovered, and what's that going to look like next year or in 20 years from now? Maybe there's another possibility for it that we haven't seen yet. So that's really exciting. And it's exciting to see the diversity of the artwork itself and the different ways in which people are studying physics and what they're doing with physics. And they've suddenly become really interesting, amazing people to me, and a really interesting field that up until now has sort of not been in my line of sight. So you guys are pretty cool. We're very excited.
I think that the point of this collaboration is not only to release the energy of science onto art and to give the choice of interpretation to the viewer and the artist, but also to give the richness of the visual arts back to all the physicists and their friends and their teachers and students that will attend this exhibit, to think about the imaginative directions that this will unleash and unlock. And so I wanted to talk a little bit with Alex McDaniel, who is one of the collaborating physicists willing to meet with an artist repeatedly and think about how to communicate from where he's coming from with his, what is it, a doctoral project?
Yes.
Would you talk about what you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm a fourth-year PhD student, and my research area is broadly in particle astrophysics. And more specifically, what I do is I use astrophysical observations such as radio waves, X-rays, and gamma rays to probe the nature of dark matter, which is 85% of the matter in the universe. However, we don't have a full understanding of what it actually is at this point. And so my artist, Randy, is a glass worker. She works with kiln-formed glass. And so in our meetings, we first met at her studio when she showed me, and I tried to explain much of my work to her, which she was also very interested in. You know, there's a connection from her previous artwork that has this sort of celestial theme, a lot of stars and moons and galaxies, which ties into the astrophysics that I do, because we're using telescopes looking out into space to try and get an understanding of what the universe is made of, essentially. And so it's been a very enlightening conversations we've had. I get time to actually work with my hands in her studio while we discuss these all these different ideas, and and she really is very excited about the stuff that I'm doing. Dark matter, it's a confusing thing for physicists because we don't know what it is. So being able to talk to her, and these questions come up, and she asks, well, what is it exactly? And I say, well, we have some ideas, but not any definitive answers. That's still a work in progress, much like our artwork is a work in progress. And it's things that you tweak, and for us, we can come up with theories and a hypothesis as physicists, and then we have to go through and do the science, look at the data, and make adjustments to the theories. Something very similar to how we do our art project, come in with an idea. We started out with this idea of dark matter, and is there a way to do that? And there's all these astrophysics images, like if you can imagine like a supernova where you have the stars in the background and all the bright colors. And so we start with that and have a lot of really good back and forth about how these ideas can be connected, and make adjustments. And now we've got a very interesting art piece that is her interpretation of the physics that I do, which is just a very cool project that we have.
She spoke of being fascinated by the horizon line, which I think many photographers and naturalists, biologists, field biologists in particular, but stained glass artists being interested in the horizon line is something very interesting, because you think of the glass as being something that will be either one panel or another, and actually she's speaking of the liminality of it, where you're going from the one color fading gradually, morphing into the other, and that's beginning to speak to more wave rather than particle, perhaps. I don't know. I think that this is not my understanding of your field, but something that may fascinate the artist, and that may be part of why she wants to work with your project in particular. Is there something you'd like to say beyond this that you've said already?
You mentioned waves, and when we're talking about light and emission, yes, we're talking about photons, but also waves, and this is something that's directly incorporated into that. And I think something about radiation and light and emission goes hand in hand with glass, because we have light traveling through glass and giving these different colors, these bright, vibrant colors that are all throughout her work, but also how we often visualize astrophysical processes. I think that her approach and her medium works really well with this interpretation of it.
KSQD 90.7 FM in Santa Cruz, and we are in The Cutting Edge, a program devoted every week on Sunday night to UCSC research with its face in the community, and its face will be at the R. Blitzer Gallery on First Friday, March 1st, opening and running all the way through the end of the month of March. Arts and Physics Fusion. It will be a fascinating show, and it's already interesting as we hear artists and scientists talk about it. We have one more scientist to talk with, and that's Joseph Connell, a graduate student in physics, and he's partnered with two different artists, and I understand that he's studying theoretical particle physics and the Higgs physics. So I'd like to ask him to elaborate on that.
How many hours do I have? No, it's pretty simple, I guess. They call the Higgs boson the God particle because it's responsible for giving mass to all of the other particles we know of. So that makes it extremely interesting. In particular, it's interesting because early in the universe there was a lot of symmetry, and then some of that symmetry was broken. So that's one of the most interesting mathematical concepts, and I, a while back, wrote a funny story about this concept of symmetry breaking. And we, with one of my artists, we illustrated it into a small book kind of thing. So I think anybody could use this analogy to understand one of the most complicated mathematical topics in the world.
We're speaking of building blocks then, and that's something that even toddlers can understand, but it gets complex at the level of a doctoral thesis.
A little bit complicated.
So tell us about the first project and the first artist and what that will be.
Okay, well, like I said, this is a story, a silly story about the math we use in particle physics. So there's a king named King Lagrangian, and he governs the kingdom, whereas that is a joke about the Lagrangian function in physics, which is basically the first thing you write down to define your theory. And then there's a bunch of characters with pun names of they're all the whole story's jokes in particle physics, but I guess the layperson won't really catch on to the puns. But there's little boxes describing them. My artist wanted to create a Professor Zippy character that describes and helps the reader along so they can understand the jokes. So this
will help you later on when you're teaching your own classes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think just a PhD in physics is for everybody, but I don't know if you'll study this in your future. But I think it's to make it accessible to everybody to think about in an allegorical way was the goal.
How do you feel like what you're studying affects us? Like, I can relate to graphene because it was my pencil. I can relate to graphene as it's going to change a lot about our computer screens and have, what we see in a sci-fi movie, this transparent screen up in the air that we can manipulate with our fingers, and it's very exciting. How do you see what you're studying? Like, how do I relate that to my everyday life? How do I look out there and go, oh, that's what he's studying? It's right there.
Yeah, I feel like that's the question that this whole project is asking. To me, it's that symmetry, physicists are notorious for being very mathematical, but the farther you go, the more abstract the math gets, I think, and it becomes actually simpler and simpler. So in this case, symmetry is something that it governs everything we do. And I think everybody can understand symmetry, and in particular, symmetry breaking is also interesting. So an example that you could see in your everyday life is like a phase transition. So for example, water vapor becoming droplets of steam, or rain condensing and falling out of the sky. That's a phase transition from one gaseous phase into a liquid phase, or water freezing from water into solid ice. So these are phase transitions, and those are identically related to symmetries. So as a particle physicist, what we do is study the symmetries, maybe more abstract than that, but we're studying symmetries of the universe and deducing what that means for our particles in our universe. So that's what this project is trying to illustrate.
And you have a second artist, because you're maybe unique in the show because you've got two artists.
Yeah, so I've always wanted to use surfing to draw on other knowledge and bring that into my physics and try to use that as a way to further understand what I'm doing. I guess that's what this project is also doing, trying to explore our research through art. So for me, I'd always wanted to use some concept of surfing to think about my physics. So in this case, I was trying to use a concept in surfing to teach people quantum mechanics. And that was the direction of the project. And then the artists and I got along so well and kept changing, our vision kept growing, and now that project has merged more into using quantum mechanics to interpret personal relationships, and it kind of grew into turn the whole everything on its head, because often in physics you come to a new realization when you get out of the details and turn the whole problem over and look at it in a different way. So we kind of ran with that counterculture direction and let that form as it did.
Would that make you a surfer personally?
Yes. I study waves in many ways. Yeah, waves, I think everybody, well, it's no secret that quantum mechanics and particle physics is all using a wave description of nature rather than a particle description, even though it's called particle physics.
One might say you came to the correct school in that case, and with a killer view out over the ocean. So I very much appreciate that window into a part of your collaboration. And I'm thinking you have 17 artists altogether in the project, and that will probably fill the R. Blitzer Gallery. Very large, and I'm looking forward to the first Friday on March 1st. This is Cutting Edge, and we're dealing with art and physics. The show is Fusion, and I want to also mention that there's a panel on the 16th of March in the R. Blitzer Gallery, and it will bring together the arts and physics participants, the artists and the scientists who have participated in making this art happen, and everyone is invited to witness the panel. It will be a free attendance, and you're invited. You're listening to KSQD. This is 90.7 FM for Santa Cruz. You're listening to Cutting Edge, an arts science fusion show. Thank you, and tune in on Sunday nights at 7:30. This is Linda Berman Hall, and I'll be with you each time.